This video is sponsored by no one. But God, do I wish it was. These are $200 I'm never gonna get back. Made for a pretty good bit though. I love video games, but one of the aspects about the modern video game sphere that I've grown to hate more and more with each passing day would have to be the world of microtransactions. From harmless cosmetics to whatever the hell Activision is trying to sell in Overwatch 2, it is fair to say that microtransactions are here to stay, for better or worse, and in most cases it can be argued that it's definitely for the worse. From many manipulative tactics, overpriced items, and just shitty strategies in general, microtransactions have gained a very bad reputation over the years, although it doesn't really seem to matter considering the fact that they have stayed prevalent in the sphere because of the many people that fall victim to the aforementioned manipulative tactics, and I will argue that nowhere is that noticed more than with gacha games. And now, the $1 million question for those not in the know. What the hell is a gacha game? And to that, let me ask you this. You ever play FIFA? Yes, this is relevant to the question. In FIFA games starting from FIFA 09, they would introduce a mode called Ultimate Teams, which essentially works the same way that a card game would work. You collect different packs of cards, and from those cards come different soccer players. Now, whether or not those soccer players are actually the ones that you want, well, there's only one way to find out. Now, that is essentially the loop of gacha games. Now, would I consider FIFA a gacha game? 4 times out of 10, probably not, because I like to act like FIFA is a figment of my imagination that I could drop once and couldn't get rid of. Now, while the way that I describe gacha games is not entirely wrong, the actual origin of gacha games come from the gachapon machines that are in Japan, which essentially work the same way, but instead of getting cool soccer players, you have like little toys inside machines. Gacha games have become insanely popular over the last few years, with games based on many popular series like Dragon Ball getting their own gacha games, or completely unique series and games like the abomination known as Genshin Impact. Many of these games make tens of millions, hundreds of millions, in some cases they even make billions of dollars on a yearly basis, making them very profitable to the big companies that simply can't help themselves to some money. I wanted to be a fair person and talk about this genre appropriately, so I played not 1, not 2, not 3, not 5, but 10 or so gacha games, which include but are not limited to DBC Dokkan Battle, DBC Legends, One Piece Treasure Cruise, Fate Grand Order, Bleach Brave Souls, Genshin Impact, gonna have to become a Brave Soul to play that one, Arknights, a Hatsune Miku game, and the Kingdom Hearts mobile game, which, as I'm reading the script and just remembering that it got shut down. So instead of that, we'll also include Mega Man X Dive, Honkai Star Rail, a Sword Art Online game that got shut down, a Naruto game that also got shut down, and Honkai, the Third Impact. It all comes tumbling down, tumbling down, tumbling down. And after playing a bunch of gacha games, it is very safe to say that while not all of them were entirely bad experiences, the amount of time that you have to put into these games, as well as the manipulative tactics, sour the experience and taint whatever passion is put into these games. But where do we even begin in a conversation about gacha games? Well, obviously, with the gameplay. Amongst many of the contentious elements of gacha games that people love to scream about, you often see them bring up the gameplay as one of the elements against the genre as a whole, as many people claim that the games are a wide array of negative adjectives. Simple, boring, Candy Crush, and repetitive are some of the terms I often see thrown around when talking about the genre, and there is some truth behind some of the things that people say. When it comes to gacha games, the vast majority are exclusively playable in mobile devices, and are not intended to provide the same experience that console games can provide. So because of the medium in which the experience is being provided, the experience often ends up with a simple gameplay loop that functions perfectly for a hardware with as limited space as a phone. When looking through the many gacha games that I played or analyzed for the video, approximately 7 out of the 15, or roughly half of them, were turn-based in some shape or form, which demonstrates what I just mentioned. The games often aim to provide a more casual experience than your average video game, many of them often playable in portrait mode, sometimes exclusively so, as that is the default orientation of the phone, making the game simple to pick up and put down. And even if a game is mainly designed to be playable in the horizontal orientation, there is a good chance that there is a mode that allows you to play in portrait. Gacha games are, first and foremost, casual gaming experiences, pick up and play type shit. At least that's the way that I see it with what I haven't mentioned before, alongside all the toxic manipulative practices these games implement to keep the players hooked. But I'm not gonna talk about that just yet. Let's talk about what these games actually have to offer. A lot of the games in this scene are primarily turn-based games in one way or another, most of them focusing in the element of team building. Despite what these games may look like, believe me when I say that these are not as simple as people make them out to be if you simply give them the time. Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle is the gacha game that I have the most experience with, as it is the only gacha game that I have truly stuck around with, as well as the gacha game that I have the most experience with. The first time I played this game was around the time of the Dragon Ball Fusions crossover banner, and I don't know if you keep up with Dragon Ball game releases, but that was around 2016. I've been playing this game for 7 years. Oh my god. Now obviously, this game will serve as a very good example of the deceiving perception that a lot of gacha games give to the general public, as there is a lot of hidden depth behind this game that is often classified as Dragon Ball Z Candy Crush Edition. Although I mean, the description isn't really that incorrect, honestly. Far and away, the main aspect of Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle, as well as most other gacha games, has to be the team building. As in this game, you can make teams out of thousands and thousands of different cards that span every single little fucking inch of the Dragon Ball franchise. Fan service in nearly every other gacha game is giving them hot women and guys. Fan service in Dragon Ball games is giving them the unit of Goku and Vegeta doing whatever the fuck. They will eat that shit up for breakfast. And by the way, by they, I mean me. I'm the guy consuming that shit for breakfast. Through the many summons, you will obtain different characters with which you will make different sets of teams to tackle the many different events in the game. And something that you'll find yourself doing quite constantly is experimenting with the different sets of characters and shit like that. Now, once you get your team all done, then the stages themselves are pretty simple. Like, there'll be a mini map with a couple of things you have to do, items you can collect, things that you have to avoid so you don't take damage. And at the end of the map, you'll be greeted by a mini-boss. At least, that's the way that it was in the early stages of the game. Nowadays, it's just mostly just like, this. I mean, I don't know about you, but whew, limiting level design, honestly, man. I mean, nowadays, it's just mostly about the bosses, which, I mean, fair enough. The bosses are the best part of the game, but oh well. The battles themselves are where you really see the team building aspect shine. You have 6 characters plus a guest character. And each turn you have a different rotation of 3 characters, all sharing the same HP. Character placement is also a pivotal part of succeeding in the game. Also, you can technically get away with it in the earlier stages of the game. Once you get to the hardest events in the game, the player will need a deep understanding of the many different characters and what their abilities are. If your team lacks a lot of synergy, then that team will fall apart. And if you lack characters that can fill out certain roles, maybe dodging, maybe tanking, then you'll have a hard time with the game, buddy. Listen man, this Candy Crush shit gets serious. Be ready to die by it. When you manage to build up the right team and understand what every character does and allow them to do their shit, Dokkan is at its best. Understanding the characters and properly strategizing is what makes this game shine. But at the same time, the turn-based nature and the lack of any movement or reactionary skill can also be to the detriment of the game in many different ways. In the most recent content, if you don't get the right rotations at the very beginning of the battle, it is an uphill battle that oftentimes does not succeed. Additionally, even with good rotations, there is still an element of luck that can affect the runs, such as the character simply not doing what the fuck they were supposed to do, and it can result in very infuriating scenarios. Overall, I think that Dokkan is an enjoyable game, but it does have a bit of its quirks. Now, this was simply an example of what the Dokkan Battle experience is like through the eyes of a player who has had a shit ton of years playing the game. However, something that is equally, if not more important, are the first impressions that a player may have when playing a gacha game. And in my case, first impressions were basically the rest of the lineup. Now, I would like to clarify that I'm not going to be as fair with any of these games as I was with Dokkan, as I feel like I do not have nearly enough experience with any of these games, and I would also like to argue that I never got deep enough into these games to actually have enough knowledge to be in depth. To be entirely frank, I always wanted to get into One Piece Treasure Cruise. Tried playing it a few years ago when I barely knew what the hell One Piece is, could never get too deep into it. But years later I decided to try again now that I couldn't shut the fuck up about One Piece. but even then it was very difficult for me to get into this game. The many mechanics of the game never really clicked with me. It is similar to Dokkan Battle in its focus on team building, but that is about all I could comprehend from the game. There were some cool units that I tried to get occasionally but never really found any luck with. It is a game that, from what I have played, I feel like it has the potential to be very fun, but it was not something that I had the time or the interest to fully dive into. Other games? Shit man, I won't sugarcoat it, I thought they were kind of boring. It's a miracle that they do have the gambling in them, otherwise my ass would have been snoring in the bed a while ago. Honkai Impact the 3rd really does make me wish that I was in the 3rd Impact, because at the very least I get to watch a pretty show before dying / having my body become part of something truly horrifying. I didn't play for long, but what I did play was possibly one of the most boring action games I have played in a while. Perhaps if I give it more time it could grow me a bit more, but for now, nah. From the short amount of time I played the Bleach Gacha game, I was instead thinking on how I could really be playing anything else. I kind of found the game to be a bit generic and a little bit boring if I'm being honest. And now I do have to specify that in the cases of some games such as these ones, what I am giving is nothing more than really brief first impressions. But you also have to understand that the first impression of a game makes a hell of a difference. If the gameplay doesn't really hook me from the very beginning, then I'm probably not gonna stick around. Especially when these games demand more attention than dating someone could ever do. I don't know why I chose this analogy. So many of these games have to explain up to the littlest details of what each button does from the very first moment, and it makes for a very boring couple of hours in which, if you're not trying to purposely make a video on the game in question, chances are your time with the game will end before you can truly get to what makes the game actually enjoyable. If a game like Bleach Brave Souls fails to hook me, I feel like that is as valid of a criticism as what a player that has invested hundreds of hours may have, and in my case, the beginning of the game failed to sell me on the game, and I did not want to keep playing. Most of these games just have that same problem. I don't know how much they could have improved the tutorial portion of the game, but from what I remember, if you were to try and play Dokkan Battle from scratch now, you'll basically start playing an entirely different fucking game. There were some games that I really did find quite fun, and I think that out of the many games that I played, the ones that I found the most interesting were Project Sekai, Fate Grand Order, and Mega Man X Dive. But the other ones, they have some other appealing qualities as well. Project Sekai may just deadass be the best game that I played for this video. I mean, let me give you a rundown. Okay, so, essentially, you take control of different bands as they uncover the Hatsune Miku metaverse and try to free shitty adults from their twisted desires. Only half of that sentence was a lie. I only played one story for the video, as there are like 6 different stories that you can play through, and I feel like there was probably a better story to jump into as I jumped into the story of Nightcord at 25. First off, Jesus fucking Christ, they really named one of the bands in the game Discord at 1 AM! Oh, because it's like, they made Discord at 1 AM, the 25th hour. And to that I say, wait, isn't one of the plot points in one of the Persona games also about a 25th hour? What the fuck are these kids doing? The moment it hits 11, I fold like an omelet during school days. Someone get them some sleeping pills or something. Fucking hell. And what do you know? This story is about the gang trying to save one of the members from... Can I say this without YouTube sending me to the Mariana Trench? Son of a bitch. Okay, let me rephrase. The Scooby-Doo gang tried to stop one of the members from... You should kill yourself now. Yeah, that. And like, that's basically the plot for the second half of the story. But then like, the second to last chapter, the big fucking climax of the story. Okay, hold on, let me calm down a bit. They go into the metaverse and stop her from committing acts that I cannot mention due to YouTube's very strict policies. In the moment, the literal fucking moment in which they solve the issue, fucking Hatsune Miku, who in this entire story embodies what I think a person who goes to Hot Topic looks like, fucking says, great, you stop her from taking her own life? Let's sing? I'm sorry, you wanna what? We went from playing Omori to having a Just Dance music video to spin off a single fucking chapter! The gameplay, on the other hand, is pretty fun. It's a rhythm game. You tap the buttons at the right time, sometimes you slide that greasy ass finger across the screen, sometimes you flick the screen. Obviously the gameplay is quite simple and it is very accessible as it has many difficulty and speed options, so it is a very beginner friendly game. Out of all the gacha games, this is definitely the easiest one to understand simply because it is just that simple. The main appeal of the game is definitely the music, although in the case of Project Sekai I can't really show it. Don't really want to test the lawyers of Hatsune Miku all that much. Speaking of music though, god fucking damn! The music in these games go so fucking hard! Fate Grand Order, from what I have played, it's a simpler game, but I like the gameplay from what I have played. And the story looks really interesting, although I am mainly talking about the anime adaptation of the story. The gameplay so far looks promising, and it looks as though it will be one of the very few games that I feel the want or desire to come back to. Mega Man X Dive is a really interesting case because technically it is no longer a gacha game. While it was a gacha title for a couple of years, Capcom as of this year has decided to cut support from the game and end its services, but in its place sold an offline version of the game for $30. You get all the content of the game available, and the only thing that you have to do is get the currency to buy the characters and weapons, which I think is a fucking sick idea. The gameplay itself is actually pretty fun with many different stages based around prior Mega Man X games, and the many characters have multiple distinct qualities that warrant unlocking them. Mega Man X Dive is a pretty fun game all things considered, and I will definitely recommend playing it, although perhaps don't buy it at its full price. I mean, for $30 you can get many of the other Mega Man titles, and for only $10 more you can get an entire X collection that many of the stages in this game are based around. So I thought the Honkai Star Rail was an enjoyable enough time. I have only around 6 hours with the game so far, and I'm only up to the part where you go to Belobog or whatever the name was, but I think that it has been an enjoyable experience so far. The battle system was surprisingly interesting. The idea of strategically being able to use your ultimate whenever and having every character have the same special bar were surprisingly interesting and intriguing mechanics, and many of the aspects of the battle system make the battles more dynamic and enjoyable. I think that the biggest problem that I have with the battle system so far is that it hasn't challenged me just yet, but that's probably also a byproduct of me not having progressed a ton through the story. So far, I think that the story has not really challenged me or encouraged me to try to experiment with who I bring into my team, and I would kind of hope that it did that, as from what I have played, the game does not look like it will be an open world, which I feel could give the developers a chance to make some of the experience more difficult. I also think that the story is not very interesting so far. I feel like it's more so the way in which the story is told. I think that from what I have seen, it has some interesting ideas, but the way they communicate it to me makes me feel kind of bored, which is a problem when I can't fucking skip the motherfucking things! I'm physically abusing my controller, let me move on and play more of the game! A lot of the games I did find quite interesting on the gameplay loops they offered, but I could not really get into many of them due to time constraints. Some games I found boring and did not want to delve deeper into, but there was one game that I fucking hated with every fiber of my being, and why yes, it was Genshin Impact. How could you tell? Genshin Impact fails in so many aspects, not just as a gacha game, but as a game in general. Now I'm gonna save all my thoughts for the game for when I inevitably make a video on this abomination of a thing, but to summarize, Genshin Impact just fails in every aspect. As a story-driven RPG, as an open world game, as a character action game, and even as a fucking gacha game, it is an absolute disgrace. When it comes to a story, my God! I have never seen a story that bores me to tears as much as this game has. It's a game that has interesting ideas but lacks the interesting ways to express those ideas, as instead of naturally showing me a world, it still feels like it would be better to have a character specifically designed for the idiots who can't pay attention to what the game is saying and need to have the entire story summarized to them. Fellas, if we want to make Genshin Impact a better game, then first off, get Paimon off the face of the earth! The open world also fails to captivate me as it feels very restricting. At every moment where I found something that I thought could be interesting, I ended up disappointed because I was not meant to do that yet. I mean, let me get my ass beat trying to fight a level 40 dungeon, you cowards! I did not find any of the free characters particularly fun to play as they mostly felt plain and basic, especially in comparison to what the rest of the cast locked behind the gacha offered. I tried out a couple of the characters that were only available through the gacha, and I actually found myself having some fun. I thought that the characters were more interesting in their design, and if all the characters, even the free ones, were designed like this, then maybe my opinion of the game will be a lot more positive. But because the free characters are so boring, in conjunction with the gacha, we are where we are now. Let me just put it in like this. The time investment in comparison to what you get on the gacha is simply not worth it. If there is something that you will learn about the world of gacha games, is that unless you make an extensive schedule to manage playing all these games at the same time, playing more than one of them at the same time will be the toughest challenge out of the whole ordeal. The biggest enemy of a gacha game player are not the inevitable horrible financial decisions of which I don't even think their descendants could possibly recover from, but rather the insane amount of time that these games demand from the player. Something that people have to understand about this genre is that these are not games that can be started and finished like a normal console game. Oftentimes, the stories these games feature are unfinished, and chances are that they will not be finished for years on end. Obviously, the games don't want their player base to leave, so instead they do a whole lot of other stuff to keep the players hooked, even if those things maybe don't make the most riveting gameplay mechanics. Grinding is one of the aspects most commonly associated with gacha games, and with all the good reason for it, as without grinding you won't be able to progress in nearly any of these games. Some of the most common mechanics include needing certain materials to upgrade the characters and make them more powerful, and to get those materials you will, and I mean you will, go on a bunch of different quests and repeat those quests over and over again so you have enough materials to do this with just one character, let alone do it with the rest of the character list you may potentially have. To give an example that I am familiar with, in Dokkan Battle there are many rarities for the rarities for the characters, with the most important ones being SSR, UR, and LR, as these are the units you always want to go for. You can upgrade an SSR to a UR, but there is also another state to the UR that you have to do, which is referred in the community as a TUR, and only afterwards can you upgrade the unit to an LR if it can go up to that state. To awaken them from one rarity to another, however, you may need medals, which can sometimes be few and sometimes a lot. Most of the new main units have an event dedicated to them in which you can get their exclusive medals to awaken them, but fully awakening them is going to take, for the most part, doing the event 11 goddamn times, possibly more if you're trying to get an LR in the game. This isn't even considering the mechanic of ECAs, which is meant to upgrade all characters to make them all viable against the new meta. And you have to do these stages 30 times. More than the money spending that you could do, the biggest factor on whether or not you even stick with a gacha game is the time that you have to invest to get all the characters and elements caught up to snuff with what the game will ask of you. The games are designed to be played basically in a daily manner, with logging bonuses and daily missions that reward the player for simply turning on the damn game, all with the purpose of keeping the player at least playing a little bit each day, grinding a couple materials for certain characters and other shit like that. And I definitely think that these features are mainly there to keep the player already in the game, because realistically speaking, these games are incredibly confusing to get into from a newcomer's perspective. I'll be completely honest when I say that half the time, I don't even know what I'm doing in these gacha games unless I look up a guide on YouTube telling me what to look out for. So many of these games simply feel hard to navigate if I'm being honest with you. Like, half of these games have the ugliest menus known to mankind. They are so damn cluttered. Every time I open up one of these, I get hit with a flashbang followed by a sensory overload. So much shit just plastered on screen. Like, I don't even know what half that shit even means. I mean, I got used to Dokkan Battle, but like the first couple of weeks of me playing the game were like me trying to fucking join a class halfway through the semester. You don't. The amount of elements that players have to take into account are so many that I wouldn't be surprised if players just left after a couple of hours, because the amount of patience that is required in order to get to the good parts of the game is simply not worth it for a lot of people, especially with already established games. I will argue that it's hard to get into a new gacha game in the market, but I will argue that it is torture trying to get into a gacha game that has been out for many years in the market, because not only do you need to catch up to the basic mechanics and many tutorials, but then you also need to learn and catch up to the 70 different new mechanics that were added between the game releasing and now. While I do think Dokkan Battle is a good game, I do also think that it's a bit of a huge ask to simply ask the player to catch up to 8 years worth of knowledge and mechanics in order to get to the fun parts of the game as fast as possible. And I mean, I guess there is the option of just not doing that, but then that would just result in a much less enjoyable experience for the player. And that is one of my main gripes with gacha games. Gacha games take such a long amount of time to truly get into. Knowing what the best equipment is, knowing what the good items are, knowing what to spend your currency on and what to not. This amount of time, it's simply just not worth it for a lot of people, which is a shame because, as I said before, a lot of the games that I played are enjoyable. And I mean, argue with me all you want, and it's just not, and it's not just Dokkan Battle either. fucking One Piece Treasure Cruise, FGO, Raid Shadow Legends, because I have to understand the why people even play this game. There are only two exceptions when it comes to this that I can remember. The first example is the Hatsune Miku Gacha game. I mean, the fucking game is a rhythm game. While there may be mechanics that do feature team building in some ways, the truth is that you can just grab whatever units you think are the nicest and simply go to town with the game. When I first started playing gacha games around 2016, I really got into the Sword Art Online gacha game since I watched the anime around that time. And from the get-go, it was a really enjoyable experience. While it still had a lot of elements which required a ridiculous amount of time, it was a really fun game and it was pretty easy to get into from my perspective. I mean, if a middle schooler was capable of getting into the game, then I think it must have been pretty simple at least. Unfortunately, this game also links into another of the issues that I have with the genre, which is the fact that these experiences are not permanent. The issue is less of an issue with the genre in particular and more so of a broader issue with games that require constantly being connected to the internet to provide the experience to the player. But I think that in some ways, gacha games are the worst offenders, and for this point, let me bring back FIFA into the fray. A lot of people know that FIFA is something that comes in a yearly basis. This year we have a FIFA game, next year there's going to be a FIFA game, and so goes on until the end of the universe. EA Sports, they took my wallet. But something that I see less people mention is how all the progress that a lot of players made over the year just vanished. And more than that, how the money of a lot of players vanishes alongside it. If you start a new FIFA game, you essentially lose all your progress. You lose all the characters that you have created, you lose all the custom teams that you had, you lose all the cards that you pulled over the year, nullifying essentially all your time, effort, and progress in the game. And that is what gacha games feel like to me, which is why I'm always so vehemently against games being gacha games. Even if the gameplay is amazing, these games are living ticking time bombs that can go from lasting 9+ years to not even making it past the first fucking year. Even if a FIFA game were to shut its servers down, you will still have the core of the game, the actual soccer game, still left intact if we disregard the Ultimate Teams mode. However, gacha games just don't always have that luxury. If a bunch of gacha games that you like were to shut down today, would you be able to say that the experience that you had was worth it? If your favorite gacha game were to shut down right now, would you be able to say that the experience was worth all the time and money that you put into that game? I am a person that places more value on single player experiences than multiplayer ones, as I often believe that single player experiences are the ones that provide the most value. And I understand that is a perspective that is solely my own. There is plenty of value in multiplayer games, which is why I still play a lot of them with a bunch of my friends. The thing is, none of the multiplayer games I have played with my friends have started destroying me as hard financially as gacha games do on their own. Oh my fucking God! The gacha systems are essentially the life and blood of these games. If people don't buy into the system, then there's not going to be any game because what the hell are they going to be paying the servers with? Hey, at least the music is pretty good for the most part. It's pretty easy to reach some of the highest levels in the game without having to spend a dime in any of these gacha games. A lot of the time, some of the people that have the most time and experience with these games haven't even spent a single dime when getting any of the characters or items. However, that doesn't mean that the experience will be mutual with everyone else. So many of these games try to manipulate the player into spending money through many different methods. Some of them actually do a good job at hiding the manipulative methods, or some others just hide essential mechanics behind paywalls. I don't actually remember if this was a thing in Fire Emblem Heroes still, but why is restarting a turn locked behind a subscription service? Are you insane? Who thought of that? The Kingdom Hearts gacha game. Yep. That's it. In and of itself, this game was a shitty PvP gacha game that punished basically anyone that didn't spend money by making it basically impossible to keep up with all the people that actually will run the game. And you have the gall to make a weekly, not monthly, weekly subscription service that is $15? What? Okay, so I checked on my most reliable source, fucking Reddit, and apparently $20 wasn't even enough to do a 10 poll. This game was daylight robbery. The idea of a gacha game having PvP elements is disgusting, man, more than anything else, because think about it. This isn't like Fortnite or every other shooter where every skin is just a copy of each other with different looks. These are real characters that affect the game as a whole. So in a sense, by paying inhumane amounts of money, eventually you may pull better characters and gain an advantage than other people in the game. Am I grasping at straws? Well, it's not unlikely, but it's also not entirely illogical to think this way. And in the case of gacha games, what you think is what matters the most because these games always target psychological aspects of the player. The games can be perfectly playable without spending a dime, but there will always be situations in which there are characters you may want to get, not because they may or may not be better, but because they look more appealing and may be more fun than the other characters you currently have. While playing Honkai Star Rail and Genshin Impact, do you think I enjoy my experience more with the basic white bread characters that they gave you for free, or do you think I enjoy my experience more with the characters that not only have better animations, more interesting movesets, ideas, and gimmicks, but are also just more visually interesting than whatever the characters I was given? Even if it isn't a matter of the characters being better, it is a matter of the game essentially locking the fun part of the game behind a glorified gambling paywall that you have no guarantee of breaking through even after spending an amount big enough to pay for a fucking gaming PC. Literally, all the free characters I tried in Dokkan Battle and Legends are extremely boring in comparison to what the paid characters offered, who offered the most fun to buzz through all the events. Mega Man X Dive had a bunch of characters with different movesets that made you want to play as most of them and gave you a reason to choose a character over the other. Goddess of Victory NIKKE has ass. Like a lot of ass. I saw an ad on TikTok for NIKKE and they literally called it the one-hand gacha game, like bro! I think it's even more offensive that you can spend such an obscene amount of money for characters who aren't even fun or good. For all my Dokkan Battle fellas, someone spent over $1,000 to get physical Dokkan Flash added. These systems are so bad that you just straight up develop pity systems for the whales who can't even pull a single copy of the hot anime woman they wanted. Like bro, you think I got a million jingle bucks to spend? No, I have 1,000 bolivars. $28. I decided to take advantage of the fact that I was working on this video and decided to splurge a little on Dokkan Battle, which was having its worldwide download celebration, and a bit later its Dragon Ball Heroes crossover summons. And so, $200 went by. For the first part of the worldwide download celebration, I tried my damn hardest to pull the damn Vegito and fuse some muscle with all my might, but alas, got a sack of shit. I did have better luck with the other summons, but does that mean that it was worth it to spend? No, absolutely not. Save up a bit more and I could have bought a second Switch. I knew what I was doing and even then I spent more than what I had desired. Imagine what someone who has tendencies they can't control would do with their bank account if they played a single gacha game. These are by all purposes gambling games. You don't even get money from them! It's not even just the gacha systems, honestly. The games are just completely designed to keep players addicted and on the game for as long as humanly possible. They try to reward the player for doing the smallest of things, to throw valuable items in their face to make them think that the progress they're making is valuable. Or hell, just give them the illusion that they're actually making progress in the first place. So many of the games are made to addict, and I really feel like we should start, I don't know, discouraging that shit. It's a shame, really, because so many of these games have the potential to be something greater, and there are examples to prove that it is possible for these games to be better than what they currently are. Mega Man X Dive Offline is the prime example that there are many gacha games that can work just as fine in an offline setting, and it is an extremely fun game, might I add. Maybe not worth $30, but it is still really fun. Imagine if they released an offline version of Memory Defrag, an offline version of Dokkan Battle, Dragalia Lost, FGO. Do you have any idea how much better Genshin Impact would be if I could just naturally unlock every single new character instead of paying for them? Unfortunately, it is very unlikely that any of these games do this though. Even if the games shut down, not every developer will want to allocate the resources to converting a mostly online game into a single player environment. And that is such shame, honestly. Gacha games can be fun, but with the way that they are now, to me, they're nothing more than wasted potential that is being advertised to children. Oh motherfuck! Now what the hell is happening here? Well, you're an hour late, I burned the kitchen down since you're the one that knows how to cook, and I have been shitting hard on gacha games. Now that ain't Merry Christmassy, is it now? Yeah, well, I mean, can you name something good about gacha games? Figure as much. Well, okay, even if gacha games are money hungry, unforgiving, heavily optimized to take your money, with little actual value, many grinding mechanics made to keep you addicted to the game, and should not be distributed to children under any circumstances, I don't think that the genre is entirely bad. If there is actual zero value in such a genre, then it would have died out long ago. However, what we fail to understand as individuals is that while we may not see the value of a genre and believe it to be without merit, that genre appeals to other people, and the positives in that genre is what keeps them coming back regardless of what we believe to be bad or potentially dangerous mechanics. You know, now that I'm thinking about it, I do have a couple of positives that I can think of when talking about gacha games. Now that just sounds a whole lot better. Want to finish the video with something actually positive to say? Hell yeah, I do. If there's something that I believe gacha games do extremely well, it's their ability to form a community. Some of the best parts of playing with these gacha games is being able to experience and talk about the games with friends and people online. If there is something that I have to give online games over single player ones, it will be their ability to unite a group of people over a certain reason. Whether it is because of people having a frustrating experience with a new boss, a new unit being bad, or being shafted in a banner. Oh my god, people are really being united by fucking being scammed out of their money. I played a lot of the SAO gacha with some of my friends when we first watched the anime. We came together to do a couple of events, or talk about new units that we got, or just do whatever. More recently, I've gotten some friends to play Dokkan Battle alongside my other friends that already were into Dokkan Battle, and we've been having a lot of fun talking about the new units and mocking me for my poor financial decisions, which, warranted. Never gonna pull a stunt like that again. I have seen many people bond or interact with others through gacha games. Project Sekai, Genshin Impact. I'm sure there are people that bonded over the collection of assets you can see in NIKKE. I still don't know how to pronounce this game. The ability to connect people, whether for the correct reasons or not, is something that I can't ignore from the genre, and if anything, I would say it's one of the most underlooked aspects of this genre as a whole. I will argue that my taste is very different from the average consumer, and that definitely applies for gacha games as well. People don't play games for the same reasons that I do. Not everyone is looking for that life-changing game that will leave me pondering, or a kick-ass action game that makes you feel like a badass, or whatever other definition you can find for Souls-like games. Sometimes, people want simpler experiences, or things that they can come back to, or things that they can grind on, I don't know. I may shit on Genshin Impact, but there is a reason why it is such a popular game. I just think they're wrong. Would I recommend this genre? No. Would I say that this genre should exist in the irregular state that it is? No. Would I even recommend spending money on this genre? Take a damn guess. However, I do see that it has value, and that value is what has kept it so popular amongst players for so long. Some of the games I played were pretty fun, all things considered, and even if not every moment was entirely worth it, and even if I'm not a fan of the genre as a whole, gacha games can have a positive effect. Also, I forgot to put this somewhere, but the music in almost all these games goes so hot! See, it wasn't that bad. I guess not. But hey, the night is still young. It's only 5 a.m. So what are you planning on doing for the next 19 hours? Got some comics and manga. Got any Naruto? Nah, I haven't bought those yet. We could read Vagabond. Ooh, nice. How about some shows? We could watch Amphibia. We could play Kingdom Hearts. We could even watch Rent a Girlfriend or even play Every Danganronpa. Grab a news and put it on the ceiling now. Whoa. Should we get started with the content marathon? Yeah, sure. Let me just do something. Well, that's all the time I've had for this year. I'm gonna go and do whatever people do during Christmas and New Year's. I'm just a random stranger you met on the internet. But hey, just come soon. Have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year's, and see you next year for some new content.